$1.2 trillion are lost in U.S. businesses every year because of poor communication. I mean, think about that. 1 in 5 business deals are lost because of poor communications. So you're showing up for a high stakes communication. It's a sales call, and you can't articulate the value of your product. No one's going to buy it. You can have the best product out there. You can have the best solution to their problem. But if you can't articulate why, how, who, all of the different answers to it, it's as if it doesn't exist.
Hello, and welcome to the Infinite Financial Freedom Podcast, where we empower you with financial literacy and guide you on your journey to financial freedom. I'm Josh Mettle, and today I'm thrilled, literally thrilled, to be joined by Lynn Smith, former national news anchor for NBC, MSNBC, and CNN Headline News. With over 15 years of experience in front of the camera, Lynn now helps enterprise leaders, executives, entrepreneurs master high-stakes communication. This is going to be a master class on how to communicate better, how to lead better, how to have more authority and impact with the words that we say and the messaging we say, and of course, the mindset. She's the founder of Lynn Smith Media and Communications, author of the upcoming children's book, Just Keep Going. I love that title. And the creator of The Unstoppable Method, which is designed to turn fear into fuel and help leaders show up with confidence, clarity, and authenticity. We might talk a little bit about a few of those fearful setbacks that turned into fuel for Lynn. So I'm excited to get into that. And from the stage to the boardroom to media appearances, Lynn's mission is to help you speak with power and lead with impact. Lynn, it is so great to see you.
What an intro, Josh. Thank you. It's great to be here.
This is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart for a lot of reasons, Lynn. But, you know, I learned early on in my entrepreneurial journey that if I was going to have influence and leverage, you know, when you have teams and you get to speak from a stage or from video, it creates leverage and it creates influence. And if I was going to have those things, I was going to have to get over my personal fear of being being perfect. You know, I was fearful that people were going to learn that I wasn't perfect. And that gave me a lot of anxiety. And it's something I've worked on for over 20 years. And to be coached by you is really a pleasure today. But let's start with your book, because there's so many questions I want to ask you. But let's talk about this children's book. What was the genesis behind the book? What's motivated you to write Just Keep Going? And what's the lesson?
Well, I can't wait to dig into perfectionism. As a recovering perfectionist myself, we have lots to get to today. So let's start with this children's book. So it was born from coaching these wildly successful executives. We're talking Fortune 500 leaders. And what I found, you know, I was tasked with turning them into magnetic communicators, which is what you were talking about. A magnetic communicator is someone who walks into the room and before they even speak, people are like, who is that? And then they open their mouths and people are like, I got to hear more of what this person has to say. Then they leave and you're like, I need to be back in that person's presence. So I'm tasked with making them magnetic. And everything I was trying, like, here's how you talk in sound bites. Here's how you drill down your message. Nothing was sticking. And I realized it was because we were treating the symptom, not the disease. The disease we discovered was their fear. So it's that voice in your head that's saying, are people liking this? Does this sound good? Are people going to see that I'm not perfect because I just stumbled over that word? And it sends them into a tailspin. It's why we start getting sweaty palms and we'll get into the whole science behind it. And what I realize is, like, why do these really successful executives have this paralyzing fear? And sometimes it's not paralyzing. They push through it. That's why they're successful. It's because when we are children, we are taught, get great grades, be first in everything, sit still, behave. We teach perfectionism. We're telling our kids, don't screw up. But in reality, if we started teaching them, fear is your best asset. It's when you know something is big and you got to push through it. Failure is going to be your biggest lessons in life. When you are frustrated, there are things that you can do to calm yourself down. You don't have to be overwhelmed by fear. So much of the book are physical techniques that I use with my own children, but we as adults can use deep breaths, jumping up and down, all of these different things. Why aren't we learning this in the classroom? So by the time we get to the boardroom, a Josh is not paralyzed by perfectionism, or an executive in Fortune 500 company isn't like, what if I say the wrong thing on Bloomberg and the whole stock price plummets, which was a legitimate fear of a client. So I set it out as, we need to start learning this so much earlier. And can we do this through a children's book so we start having these conversations with our kids? And I think this message is as much for us as parents as it is for our children. Just keep going through what scares you.
I think, as a father of a 13-year-old beautiful young daughter, and as a father of a 15-year-old young man, I feel that it's harder for them. The pressure is greater for them than it was for me.
Unbelievable.
Because they've got all these pictures of perfection that they're watching, screen roll after screen roll. And you know as well as I do, there's 100 of those videos edited, curated, makeup fixed, all the things perfect. But that's their vision of what they're trying to compare themselves to.
And I found this in my 8-year-old when he was going to try out for a team. And he's like, Mom, what if I don't make it? And I was like, buddy, if you don't make it, then go practice during the summer and we'll try again. Like, why is there this human instinct in us of panic, of like, what if, what if, what if? And these teenagers, to your point, and I have a 6-year-old now, a 9-year-old, so I don't even know what I'm going to have to deal with when I have to deal with social media. You can't control what is outside, just like we can't control what people think of us in the outside world. We can only control internal. For us as adults, we can control our internal validation. We can't control our external validation, which is what people think of us. We can control what we teach our kids in our homes. We can't control what social media does to rot their brains. In our homes, we can stop them and we can have conversations and say, this is not real. Right? You get it, right? This is not real. Everyone out there partying and having a great time, that's a highlight reel. So It really is like, how do we as adults and parents take back control of the narrative, which we need to do for ourselves as much as we do for our kids? You had to coach yourself out of perfectionism, and you're a wildly successful individual. We have to take back control.
I love this book. I love you wrote it. I can't wait to get a copy of it. So let me just ask you, when is it out and where do people get it?
September 30th. It's at your doorstep, but it's on pre-order right now. So all the major outlets, Target, Amazon, Book Indigo, all the things. So you can buy it on pre-order.
Can't wait to give it to my kids. I bribe my kids to read books that I really like. So I don't know about you. But
I'm not above that either.
Yeah. I mean, if there's a lesson that I want them to learn, I am willing to pay for it. So thanks for writing the book. Let's talk a little bit about your transition, right? You're this national TV anchor for the biggest media companies. And then you decide to take a complete pivot, which must have been scary as hell, to start your own business and to help leaders own their narrative. Like, what was that journey about and what was that experience for you like?
Well, I'm married to an entrepreneur, so I know how crazy we have to become entrepreneurs. And I am a recovering W-2. So I worked for a company for 20 years. Was it terrifying? Absolutely. But here's what it came down to. Being in news for almost 2 decades, I saw a total shift in what I intended my purpose to be as a journalist. My purpose was storytelling. I wanted to get to the truth. I wanted to present both sides. All of those things started to fall apart because of what we know legacy media is struggling with right now, which is, how do we keep eyeballs on TV sets? And we had to sacrifice some of those things that in my core was why I became a journalist. So I've got 2 little kids, and I'm thinking to myself, if I'm missing mornings and not being able to drive them to school and show up and field day, I better sure as hell love what I do and feel purposeful in it. And I didn't. So it came down to, what is it all for, of a question. And when I really looked at the numbers and said, I'm afraid, but I know and I have this determination to reverse engineer what it took for me to show up on camera and communicate with confidence, and now help other individuals do that. And the most powerful platforms in the media, be it TV, podcasts, keynotes, investor calls, whatever it is, that's purposeful work. Because when you see the transition from maybe hesitant to becoming a headliner, it's like, man, somebody feels incredible today because of these strategies. And I can wake up and feel like I don't need to take a shower at the end of the day and assess all of my morals. And so the fear, was it there? 1,000%. Do I still wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning busting my tail because I'm an entrepreneur? Yes. But is it so much better than cashing a paycheck? 1,000%.
That's a great story. Thank you. Great answer. So this is a big question, but I'm just curious, like, what were a few of the biggest lessons learned from your time on air that have been most impactful in the business world, and how have you transitioned those lessons into what you do and what you teach now?
What shocked me the most is the fundamentals of communication are not taught. So
Mm,
think about it. We're getting to a CEO role, or we're getting even into mid-level management. We've maybe gone to business school. We've obviously graduated college, in some cases not, but there's no one that sits you down and say, here's how you talk in sound bites. Here's how you drill down your message. Here's how you prepare for high stakes communications. So instead, we kind of equate it to packing for a big trip. If we have a high stakes communication event, we either
mhm.
overpack and we just study constantly. We script out every word and we end up coming across robotic, or we underpack because we're paralyzed by the anxiety of it and we wing it and we just sort of pray. And
Mhm.
then we are rambling. We say a lot because we're trying in our brain to connect our words, right? People say to me all the time, why do I say Why do I say so? Why do I say right? And it's because your brain is trying to get you to the next place that you're trying to go to. Whereas if you prepare properly, you know exactly what your takeaways are and you know how to present them in a soundbite. And that's what a compelling communicator does. And they do it not perfectly. So all the time, I have leaders say to me, I just want it to be perfect. So I scripted it out. And in the end, what happens? They get the outcome that they were trying to avoid. It's painful because they
Mhm.
sound robotic and scripted.
Yeah.
And so perfection is the killer of personality. And we need to turn our scripts more into service of our audience. So if I were thinking to myself right now, I need this to be perfect, everyone needs to love this, then you would get a totally different me. I'm thinking, how can I help Josh's audience right now to become magnetic communicators? And you feel that energy, right? Magnetism is energy. So there's neuroscience and real data behind the frequency at which you vibrate. And that is so very essential in effective communications. So the lesson to me was, wow, this is really needed at the highest levels. I was just working with one of my clients who's a CEO of a big company, and he said, I need you to work with a buddy of mine. He's a young CEO, and he just posted a video on LinkedIn, and it was awful. And you think to yourself, how does a guy, girl, anyone get to a position where they haven't gone through that proper training, that they're posting their first video as a CEO, and the reaction is,
Mhm.
oh, that was painful. We can't afford to do that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the only way to get good is to get through bad, right? I
That's
mean,
right. And
I,
know what's not working.
that's exactly right. I love this phrase that you came up with, or I'm giving you credit for coming up with it, high stakes communication. And I've heard you say that, one bad media or boardroom moment can really set you back in your career. So let's just talk about, like, what do most leaders get wrong when it comes to high stakes communication?
Well, first, what is a high stakes communication, right? So it can be a media appearance, a keynote. Heck, it can be an all call with all of your employees.
Yeah.
It's because the stakes are this. If you deliver a poor communication, that it's not only a loss of trust, it's a loss of money. And I'm going to throw out some statistics here because they blew me away. The State of Communication Report, which was done by Harris Poll, found that $1.2 trillion are lost in US businesses every year because of poor communication.
Hmm.
I mean, think about that. 1 in 5 business deals are lost because of poor communications. So you're showing up for a high stakes communication, it's a sales call, and you can't articulate the value of your product. no one's going to buy it. You can have the best product out there. You can have the best solution to their problem. But if you can't articulate why, how, who, all of the different answers to it, it's as if it doesn't exist. And how frustrating is that? So now we have data behind how incredibly costly it is to be an ineffective communicator. And that's what I mean by saying these are high stakes communications. So leaders tend to go into them either overpacking or underpacking. We call it the Goldilocks effect. When you get it just right, when you prepare properly, it's the Goldilocks effect. And they aren't putting enough either attention on it or too much attention on it. And so they come out frustrated. And it's way too costly to ignore. And that's why I'm so passionate about doing this, because this, when we see the transition and we see the work, it's powerful and they're able to influence in a way they've never been able to influence before.
I love that framework around underpack or overpack. I've done both. Neither are fun.
Nope.
And I've had a few Goldilocks moments, but that's a great framework and a great way to think about it. I also want to ask you, you've created this unstoppable you method. I'm assuming this is part of the kind of core pillars to get these high stakes communications right. Let's dive into that. How does the unstoppable you method help entrepreneurs become more magnetic, confident, and influential, et cetera?
Well, the first question I ask in the Unstoppable You method is, what is stopping you right now? So in my keynotes or in my presentations, I have everyone take out their phone. And in the notes section, I ask them, what would you do? And type this into your notes section. What would you do if you were unstoppable? Like, what does it mean to be unstoppable? It means there's no friction. And so there's not a rejection, there's not a money problem, there's no friction to what it is you're trying to achieve. What would that be? So we get answers like, I'd start a podcast, or I'd quit this day job and start my side hustle as a full-time thing. And all of these beautiful, amazing things that would really change the landscape. Think about if everyone did what they dreamed of doing, if they were unstoppable, right? The world would be a pretty incredible place. So after they say that, I say, well, what is stopping you? And inevitably, I get a version of a fear of failure. So it's either, well, what if the money doesn't come in and then I can't pay my bills and all of these. It's some version of fear. And it was so prevalent that we created a quadrant of qualms because it always fell into one of four categories: fear of failure, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, or feelings of not enough. And this is after working with hundreds of executives. And we would ask them the same questions. We would ask them a series of questions that would get them to feeling really great about themselves because they'd identify what's really unique about them. Then we dig into what they feel like is holding them back. And that's when it unlocked all of the same data. And I'm a journalist. Like, if I see a trend in something, I see that to be, okay, we need supporting data behind that in order to call it a fact. So I dug in deeper. Well, we landed on the brain bully. The brain bully is the killer of communications. What is the brain bully? It's that voice in your head. What if this doesn't work out? What if everybody hates this? And the science behind that I was sort of teasing at the top of this is our thoughts live in the back of our brain and they move to the front of our brain where our decisions and actions are made. And that leads to our outcomes. So if we are thinking, what if I fail at this? The front of our brain, which processes that data, is like, alert, alert, this is dangerous. And it's from prehistoric times where we were being protected from saber-toothed tigers. It was like, hey, this is something dangerous. Well, it doesn't know your keynote's not a saber-toothed tiger. So it's trying to keep you safe in a cave. And it also then sends all of the physical reactions, the cortisol, the amygdala hijack that you've heard the expression, the term that's coined by somebody that's name is escaping me right now. But all of those physical reactions, sweaty palms, shaky voice, nervous nuts in your stomach, that's all because you've sent the thoughts to the front of your brain that's triggering a survival instinct, which leads to the outcome that you're trying to avoid. So how do we fix that? We reframe the thought. And the processing of that data is now, oh, okay, you're good. Get out there. Go ahead. And so for some people, doing something like this, getting on a podcast, it's like, oh my God, I can't do that. I hate the sound of my voice. I don't like to even look at myself on video, because you're sending those thoughts to the front of your brain that's triggering this as a threat. Whereas when I go on things like this, after 15 years of being on camera, yes, that's easy. But what people don't realize about me, I used to have a crippling fear of public speaking.
Mm.
So yes, I can be in a studio and camera and I'm totally fine. Used to put me on stage and all the amygdala hijack would start happening, which I had to develop a method for myself to overcome that. And when I saw it worked for me, I worked on it with my clients. When I saw it worked for them, I developed the Unstoppable You method, which within it, we teach the magnetic code. And the code is what takes you and unlocks the magnetic communicator within.
It's fantastic. And, I remember so many times getting up on stage and like everything, it's like the community in front of me is going to rush the stage and they're all going to kill me. I'm so nervous. And you lose that narrative. You lose
I
what you're
know.
trying to communicate. Can
That's
you
right.
dig in just a little bit further, perhaps about what was that method that you came up with that, and I think you had a moment where you had a freeze moment on stage
Yeah.
and you were able to overcome it. Well, tell us a little bit about that moment because everybody, I think that'd be fun. I mean, you're so polished and there hasn't been a in your entire communication this far. It's so incredible, but you weren't always this comfortable. So tell us about the time you stumbled and how did you create a method to get through that, or what is that system for you?
I'm super open about it because yes, you see me on camera or you see me on social media and it's like, well, yes, it's easy for you because you were on TV for 15 years. And I'm like, yeah, well, you weren't there. 4 years ago, I had just left the TV news business and I was booked for a keynote, 50 C-suite women. And here is the kicker. It was called Unleash Your Edge, How to Shine on Camera, on Paper, and in the Room. So I was teaching people how to show up and be amazing, which now
Oh,
I can laugh about. But at the time, it was, God, it was so embarrassing. So I get up there and I underpacked. I was avoiding because I hate public speaking. And I was like, okay, my slides are done. I'll just get up there and everything will come into place. And I got into my position and they had just read this entire intro that was like glowing about my career. And my brain bully said, you're not on TV anymore. Nobody cares about what you have to say anymore.
mm.
And my brain just disconnected from my body. And I tried talking, but then I panicked because I had no idea where I was going with anything. I mean, it's your worst case scenario, right? Like everyone says, I'm afraid of freezing, but then they usually don't. I did. So then my mouth turned to cotton because I panicked and the amygdala was like, okay, you're dying. And then my voice started to shake. And Josh, no joke, I should have, in hindsight, I was like, why didn't I fake fainting? Because then I could have been like, medical emergency, sucks to be me, but I'm okay, guys. No, so instead I said, I am so sorry. I'm failing at this. Let's go to Q&A. And they started asking me questions and I was still recovering. I still was a little shaky, but I got through it because I just kept going. And I, at the end of it, had several people come up to me, including it was at a country club, and the waiter at the country club gave me a hug and said, I can't tell you how much I needed to see that today.
Mm.
Because I think that people feel seen in others pushing through their failures. It's almost like this validation that it's okay if we fail.
Yeah.
And I pushed through it. I survived. I got to the other end of it. I got into my car. I broke down crying, of course. I called my husband. I called my mom. I called my sister. My speaking career's over. And in that moment, after wallowing, which I wouldn't be human if I didn't feel like a total idiot and I was so embarrassed. I just kept going in the sense of I hired a keynote coach. I created the method that I teach now to beat your brain bully. And I kept showing up. And every time I showed up, I was a little bit better. I didn't overnight turn into a keynote speaker, but every time I showed up, I was a little bit better. And the more and more and more. And now I show the after, which is my new sizzle reel, which I would have never even imagined that it could look like that. But I show it to show people it's possible and progress happens in that 1%. And I have a TEDx booked on September 20th. And I think to myself, how the hell did that happen? But it's because it's the whole principle behind just keep going. You don't have to be perfect. You have to connect and be human. And when you do, the rest takes care of itself.
Truer words were never spoken. You do not have to be perfect. You have to be human. I so feel for you in that moment. I was doing a presentation one time in Vegas to a very small live audience. There was only about 50 people, but it was being televised or broadcasted through a subscription basis to over 10,000 mortgage originators in the country. And I'm, supposed to be one of 10 people talking to this group as an expert. And I got up there, I got into my intro, I stepped on a part of the stage and it like creaked and I thought I was going to fall through the stage. So I moved to the right and then I got blinded by the light and I moved back to the creek and I looked back up and I was like, I have no idea where I am. Like, no clue so I looked back at my slide and it's like, next slide. And just like tried to pull it off and keep it going. And it was it was like literally like I was jumping out of a plane without a parachute. It was so scary, as silly as that was. I got to the end of the presentation and I was so disappointed in myself. And people kept saying, like, that was so great. Thanks for sharing that. And I was like, you didn't know that I totally screwed that up? And they're like,
No.
no, we didn't even notice it. And I was like, oh, it's so hard to get up there and be calm, cool, collected, human, not perfect, and to pull that off. So I'm glad you're out here teaching it for entrepreneurs. Let's start with an entrepreneur who might be interested in public speaking, media, podcasts. Like you said, if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you dream to do? Where should that entrepreneur start on refining and building this skill and to get over their what was it, the doom brain, the fear brain?
The brain bully.
The brain
get
bully,
over,
yeah.
yes. The first piece of it is really awareness of what it is that your brain bully is telling you. And as we take you through the method, we start with naming your brain bully. Right. So my brain bully's name is Bob because my son got a fish for Christmas and named him Bob. And I thought that was hysterical. I was like, who names a fish Bob? But it's also a beta fish and beta fish eat other beta fish. So every time those thoughts came in, that was like, Lynn, this is going to happen again. And it would happen every time. I'd go up on stage and it's like, what if it happens again? And I would say Bob, and it immediately externalizes that voice from who you are. And then you go to that next step. So we have a name it, claim it, reframe it, and tame it in the method. So the first step of naming it. The second is claiming it for what it is. It's our prehistoric code that hasn't gotten the Control-Alt-Delete button pushed yet. So it doesn't know we're living in 2025 and not 025. It's simply doing its job to protect us. And once we understand that, it takes some of the mystery around, why am I stumbling? Why am I saying It's just understanding that your brain's doing its job. The third piece rather, is reframing the thought from what if everyone hates this to I've seen this work time and time again. And then the last piece of this is taming it, because it's going to come up again and again and again because our brain's just doing its job. And every time it does come in, there's a power phrase that I want people to start using. If you don't think that I'm the crazy woo-woo lady that's talking about brain bullies, stick with me. This works. There are like leaders of billion-dollar companies that use this. It works. You say, sit down, watch this. It's almost like you take back control. And if you follow this, every time you're about to walk out there, every time you're about to press record, you say, Bob, reframe the thought, sit down, watch this. And it's like this boost of confidence, because you mentioned confidence at the beginning. We haven't really defined what confidence is. I get a lot of people saying to me, well, I don't want to come across as arrogant. And there's a really big distinction between confidence and arrogance. So arrogance is just thinking that you're good at everything. Hello, narcissists out there. But confidence is the true belief that you can do anything despite any circumstances. Big difference. So when you show up on stage and you're confident because you know if Josh stumbled on that thing, then looked in a light, you know that you're going to get yourself back on your mark and look into that camera and start delivering. Even though your brain bully is telling you a different story, your confidence gave you the ability to do that. And nobody knew differently because you were confident. And confidence is a choice every day, even when you're not perfect, that you keep showing up. Because if you would have fallen on your face, it would have been embarrassing, but it wouldn't have been the end of Josh's career. It just would have been a sidestep and an embarrassing moment. And someday a really funny story on a podcast, like my keynote is now every time I share it.
Fuel for your success. Talk to me a little bit more, Lynn, about the sit down, watch this. That is your verbal command to Bob to relegate Bob and those thoughts to a subservient role or position in the conversation going on inside your head.
Yeah.
Walk me through
Almost taking him out of your brain. And it's so fun to hear people's brain bully names because sometimes it's little one, right? Your brain bully is sometimes not vicious. It's just a little girl that is like, stay small because it's safer to stay small. It's not always a really big, forceful voice. Or some, like our mutual friend Jared, it's MFer, right? Like, it's like, all right, sit down, MFer. I don't know how family friendly this podcast is, or else I'd go all in. But when we name it, we externalize it from ourselves. When we say, sit down, watch this, we put it in its place, its proper place, not silencing it and pushing it out because that's impossible. Our brain's just doing what it's intending to do. But when it's sitting right here and you are almost performing for it, and you're like, sit down, watch this, I've got this. You're training your mindset into absolute confidence in delivery. And you mentioned mindset as well. It's really something that we cannot gloss over. So you are an elite athlete when you are a magnetic communicator. And as an elite athlete, they have mindset game day routines. They wake up at the same time. I know as an anchor, I sat down in the anchor seat at the exact same time. I drank the same amount of coffee. I went into hair and makeup at the same time. We all did. All of my friends that are anchors, because you need to get yourself into the mindset of connecting with the audience, looking into the camera, delivering it in a way that makes people feel like I am feeling like I am seen by this person. That's the whole goal of becoming an anchor, is people are inviting you into their homes and are trusting you with this information. And so that game day routine is different for everyone. A lot of my clients, they're just like, okay, I need a really big workout and then I don't really eat because I don't like a full stomach. It's always different, but you have to get yourself into the mindset of an elite athlete. And did you play sports, Josh?
I did.
Yeah. I mean, I was a big athlete. So when you were playing sports, right, how did you get yourself into the mindset?
Game day ritual, exactly as you said, always the same socks, the same underwear, everything the same, right? And you just got into this ritual that puts you into this state that you knew, if I do this thing, I'm going to show up at a peak performance and I'm going to be able to rock it.
And you hear from any elite athlete and they tell you the same.
Totally.
Skill takes you here. We all can only reach the same skill here. After that, it's mindset. The Tom Brady's, the Djokovic's, all of them, they all say it was mindset that took me over to the other side. Same is true for people in high stakes communications.
We were talking about this before we hit record, but I think it's relevant and I think people should hear this. It was helpful for me. I was listening to a podcast with Ed Millett, and Ed coaches, billion-dollar CEOs, Fortune 500 CEOs, quarterbacks that have played or won the Super Bowl. Like, this guy teaches and coaches elite people. And he said, we coach on a lot of different things and it varies. But the one thing that is the commonality that everybody from the CEO of the Fortune 500 company to the winner of the Super Bowl, we coach on mindset. They all need that help. And that was helpful for me because I think as humans that are seeking perfectionism, I catch myself wondering, am I the only person who has doubts about myself? Am I the only person who knows that I'm not perfect? And it's just helpful to know that everybody deals with that issue.
I also think you make a really good point, and it's important to point out that this is not being completely reckless. So there is a important sort of asterisk that we need to put on confidence, that it doesn't mean you just go out there and do everything with no risk being considered.
Yeah.
It's that you are very smart about assessing your risk and the understanding of where did all this come from. So think about when we used to be in tribes and there had to be a leader. And if you challenged the leader, you could be killed. So we created this society in which we had to be careful in speaking up. It could come with consequences. And even though we are hundreds of millions of years later, we still have that human instinct of being cautious, making sure we say the right thing, making sure we don't upset the tribe. And that's okay. It's not like we can be completely reckless in our communications or in our actions. It's just the awareness of what doesn't serve you in that reality, which is perfectionism, which is unrealistic expectations. But of course, we are going to have natural doubts about things that we can do. It's the choice that you make after the doubt that counts. I doubted whether or not we were going to be able to continue to provide for our family in the same way that we did when I had a news anchor career and I had a certain check that came every month and 2 years left on my contract. Did I have doubts? Of course I did. It'd be insane if I didn't. But did I choose to still do it because I assessed the risk and I made the choice to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning every single day and network my tail off every single afternoon? I mean, yes, I still did it. It's an important asterisk we should point out to the audience because I don't want people to think that I'm just saying, go out there, be confident, be reckless, and go do anything because you can. No, this is just highlighting your mindset might be clouded by something that you are in complete control of clearing.
If you're a business owner or an investor, you know the struggle. Tax returns don't always tell the real story, especially when you're self-employed. That's why we created the Entrepreneur Capital Lines of Credit. Use your home equity to launch, expand, invest, or scale your business, all without the old roadblocks of mortgage lending. Call us today and let's unlock that frozen cash sitting behind the sheetrocks of your home to catapult your business to growth. I'm going to ask you kind of a personal question, if you don't mind. I'm going to compare two different types of leaders. There's a type of leader who, when they're giving a presentation, is either reading from the screen or reading their notes. And I think the danger of that type of leader is the people in the audience can never feel their heart. You can't feel somebody's authenticity and humanity, if you will, when they're reading from that paragraph, because you can tell that they won't let you in enough to create a humanizing experience. The other side, the complete other side of the spectrum is somebody that is so I guess real or unfearful of how they communicate, that sometimes they say things that can offend people, right? Like they can be too loose with their words. And some people might gravitate towards you. Some people might be repelled by the lack of etiquette or professionalism. So how do you coach people on both sides of that spectrum? And do you think there's a larger risk one way or the other? I'm just curious about your personal opinion and coaching on that.
I think that's such an important and great question because you kind of just laid out overpacking and underpacking, right? So scripts kill personalities 1,000% of the time. And another thing it does is you lose trust with the audience because if you're reading off of notes, your audience instantly is told you haven't prepared, even if that's not the perception that's correct. But if you can't deliver this without your notes, then either you're not prepared, you don't feel confident in your message, you're not really a great magnetic communicator, even if they aren't aware of that's the perception that they have of you. And here's a really crazy stat, because I talk about the 3 to 30 rule a lot. In communications, you have 3 seconds to get someone to like you and 30 seconds to get someone to trust you because our attention span is so short. So if I were to start this podcast and I would have said, hey, Josh, thanks so much for having me. This is a really great podcast. I think that this is going to be a really interesting conversation, right? Like people are checked out. Like this is going to be boring. But if I started it with, I've got so much to talk about here. Instantly, the audience has been told and triggered to say, okay, she's bringing it, right? But within 30 seconds, we've got to give them information that earns their trust because they're in the Instagram mentality of if I haven't gotten something, I'm scrolling. So it's no different of what they teach you in social media. It's the same thing to be true on stage. So if you have a script, you're not able to follow that 3 to 30 rule, but even more importantly, you lose the 1/10 rule. So when I was trying to find research behind the 3 to 30 rule, other than just I know it to be true from talking to magnetic communicators, I found the science is actually the brain makes a decision about you within 1/10 of a second. And then no matter how much more information you feed the brain, it usually doesn't change its mind. So it's like you never get a second chance at a first impression. That is scientifically factual. So if you walk into a room and you've got a piece of paper, within 1/10 of a second, the audience has decided this person's probably not prepared and they needed to go off script and they need to look at their notes. On the other hand, somebody that's underpacking is just going up there and shooting from the hip and saying whatever comes to mind. That's not communication. That's under preparation. So the Goldilocks effect is what we try and go for. We've properly prepared because we have a very specific methodology behind drilling down information, not dumbing it down. And oftentimes I'm brought into these big companies and they've got comms teams and they've got all of these people that are doing their job, but they're handing the CEO piles of information because they feel like if I don't prepare properly, then it's on me. And if he or she is caught without the knowledge of this sidebar conversation, then I'm the one that's on the line. Right. And most recently, we had a CEO that got all of these questions ahead of time for our panel, and then the response was scripted out by the comms team. And this particular CEO was like, I don't, this doesn't sound like my voice. I don't know how to. So we had to end up doing training with the comms teams. And I now work as much with comms as I do with the CEO and C-suite to teach them this new way of preparing your leader for high stakes communications. It's not that we under prepare or over prepare. It's that we get the information drilled down properly and presented in a way where he or her brain can process it and then communicate it for their voice, because that's what's so key. The human piece that you're talking about, it has to be in their voice. But as long as they have the information that we need to get, that's what's key. Now, I also call them green flags and red flags in how we train comms teams. Like, what are the green flags, the things that we want to come across, and what are the red flags? Like the tariffs. No one wants to talk about the president and tariffs in companies. We got to have an answer. We can't avoid it. So what's our answer? We have red flags and we craft out our communications based on that. But it's really that what you're getting to is the over prepare and the under prepare, when in fact we need to be looking at the Goldilocks effect.
Great clarity there. Thank you. That was helpful for me. Okay. So clearly, to create this Goldilocks effect and to knock it out of the park when it comes to high stakes communication, this takes work. It takes practice. It isn't just, you don't just wake up one day and all your presentations are Goldilocks. So there has to be a return on investment as well as just creating visibility, if you will, for this type of communication. So do you help leaders not only create this Goldilocks type communication, but how do they get a return on investment with it? Is it worth all the work that takes to get this Goldilocks type interaction?
So I love that you're asking this question because right before this podcast, I got an email from a client. Let me see if I can find it because it was so good. I'm just looking at my phone. So she sent me this and she was like, something in your material really struck me. And she said, these fascinating statistics. Companies with effective communicators show 47% higher returns for shareholders. And 73% of decision makers say thought leadership significantly increases their trust. And she was like, those two statistics, she's a beta reader for a book that I'm working on. Those two statistics alone told me every single company needs to be investing in effective communications. One, we know how much money is lost because of it. But two, this is the ticket to trust, authority, market share, capitalization, all the things. And think about the future leader. So what's the one thing that AI cannot replace? Executive presence.
Yes.
Persuasion.
Yes.
Leadership, walking into the room. A robot cannot have human energy. And energy moves people. It allows them to say yes because they connect to you. You can present all the information in the world. You can do everything else and automate everything else, but your one asset in so many cases people aren't investing in. It amazes me, which is typically why when we work with companies, we stay with them for years because it's not a one and done. You don't just get communications training. It's like, oh, I have a keynote coming up. Can we do a prep session? Because you need to it's almost like I need to get back into the ring and do a warm up. I need to go do a workout. And we never stop working out, right? I mean, we always are going back to the gym.
Right. Very, very helpful. I want to, where I'm looking at the clock here, and I know it's a great podcast when we're running out of time.
I love this conversation, Josh. You're so good.
Oh, thank you. You've been a great coach, and I've taken some great notes. I want to ask you 3 quick hit, tactical type questions that people can leave here with something. And if they've got a communication to their company, if they've got an important high stakes meeting, that they're going to be able to apply something they learned here. So let's talk a little bit about a daily or weekly practice that can help someone build their confidence in their communication over time. Is there anything tactical that you could give people to practice in on a regular basis?
Okay, so I want you to start talking in sound bites, right? So we call the construct of a sound bite hook, meet, chill. You hook them within 3 seconds, give them one valuable takeaway, and then button it up with a thought. So begin practicing the hook, meet, chill formula. Here's what I hear most often. I ramble, I repeat myself, and I say a lot. Those are the 3 most common problems. We ramble because we don't have a clear idea of our message. It's under preparation or over preparation. We repeat ourselves typically because we want to make sure the audience understands what we have to say. But if we have a clear message, we will not need to repeat ourselves. So I kind of break free from that misperception that the audience just needs to be told over and over and over again in order to understand it. And then the rambling and ums we know is the brain bully. And it's just our brain trying to either overcome the voice or try and get to our next point. So if we prepare properly, all of that stuff gets resolved. That's why I say if we treat the disease, we actually see a movement. When we treat the symptom, we just get the same results. So begin practicing in Zoom calls. What's the first thing that comes to mind? What's that hook that's coming out of your mouth? I want you to practice talking sound bites. That's my hook. And then I give you the valuable takeaway. And here's the most important part. I land the plane with that chill factor, that chill going down the back of your neck. And landing the plane is hard stop. Have you noticed when I'm answering your questions, I'll complete the thought and then it's so that you know my thought is completed. And I've seen it so often, it drives me nuts. When I'm watching a lot of my executives, they'll send me videos to assess. And I was like, you didn't give me the chill factor. Where was the chill factor? And they're like, I felt like I was going on too long. So I just ended it abruptly. But we've got to have the chill factor because that's the human cue that you're finished with your thought. So practicing talking in sound bites is that first tactical piece.
Love it. Fantastic. So let's talk about someone having a big conversation, a high stakes conversation coming up. Talk about preparation. What do you do leading up to that moment that will help people show up in their best place?
I want you to ask yourself this question. Walking into your preparation session, what do you want people to be thinking and feeling after hearing you speak? Just answer that question. I want them to be excited about what we've just created. I want them to think that leader is trustworthy. That is the cornerstone of every communication. What do I want people to be thinking and feeling after hearing me speak? And then we have 4 very specific questions that we ask to filter our information through. And I created these questions based on having to create questions when I was interviewing people, and I only had 4 minutes. So I needed a holistic message in a very short amount of time. And there are 4 questions of what's the big headline? What's the big takeaway of your communications? How does that impact the audience? What does it mean for them? What have you seen in your experience that validates that argument? This is where your sneaky mentions come in, your information that you share with others, that like your data and all of that. Make sure it's only high, big number data that hits you over the head. Don't throw a bunch of numbers at me. And then the 4th one is, what does this mean for what's ahead? So if you filter all your information, first of all, you've got 4 sound bites right there. But if you share those 4 pieces of information with an audience, you'll have a holistic message. And then it's, what's your game day routine? Are you taking yourself through the game day routine? And there's so many different preparation techniques that we work with in programs. But if you just start there and start filtering your information through that lens, you're going to see such a transformation in what feels like right now an overpack or an underpack.
Beautiful. Last question for you. One mindset or speaking tip, and maybe you've already given these, so you just want to double down on something you've already said, that our listeners can start using today to become a more compelling and influential speaker.
So I'd love for you to, this is a mindset hack. Whenever that voice comes in, like, I don't want to come across as arrogant, or people might not think I'm smart. I literally had a doctor that was curing cancer say, I'm worried that my audience is not going to think I'm smart. And I was like, well, if this is the case, then everyone has this. Right. I want you to ask yourself, have you ever been presented any information in which that might be the case? So a great example, worked with an executive at a big company where she said, I worry that my background, which is different than what this company was, is leaving me to be not as high level as the people that are in the boardroom that I'm with. And I said, well, have you ever gotten any information in which that area of expertise is a liability? And she's like, actually, no, I guess you're right. It's the opposite. I get a lot of feedback that my experience in tech is such a huge asset to this company. And I was like, okay, like, we just haven't asked ourselves that question. Have you gotten any feedback or information that would validate that concern? And if you have, that's really important. So we talk a lot in my programs about feedback and criticism. Feedback is really good. I spent 15 years getting criticism and feedback, so I know the difference between the two. Criticism is like, you're not wearing enough blush, that color looks awful on you, you talk too loud, like all of this stuff that is like, I talk with my hands, like I can't change certain things. Feedback is, I had wonderful piece of feedback early on where I would ask too long of questions. I was asking questions and just adding on all of this stuff. And I was like, that's amazing feedback. I'm really going to work on that. And I did. And I became a better interviewer because of it. So feedback, as long as you're looking at it from a lens of this is feedback, not criticism, which we instantly throw up the self-defense mode when we get what feels like criticism. But if you've gotten feedback, like, hey, sometimes I feel like you shoot from the hip and it's offensive to some people, that's an important thing to change. There are some big things we work on with executives that we need to change. No one's just like, you come in and we're just, shining you up. No, there are definite habits to break, but ask yourself, do we get information that this needs to be changed?
My coach tells me all the time, or challenges me, and he reminds me, don't believe everything you think.
That's right, because it's the brain bully.
That's right. It's the brain bully. And have you had feedback to that effect? Yes. Okay. Then let's investigate that and make a change and improve. No, don't believe everything you think. Right. So I think that was a great way to end this. Lynn, this has been incredibly valuable. Like, your energy, your framework, your ability to communicate is fantastic. How do people connect with you and learn more from you if they want to take this into action as entrepreneurs into their business?
Thank you, Josh. And you passed the test with flying colors as far as being a magnetic communicator yourself. You're a great podcast host. I have to tell you, I go on some podcasts and I'm like, would you like to go through my programs? But you can learn more about me at lynnsmithtv.com or lynnsmith.com. And then I'm on all socials at Lynn Smith TV on both LinkedIn and Instagram, where I share a lot of these techniques. I really don't feel that this kind of information should be just saved behind paywalls. I just feel like I want to impact as many people as possible.